Beneath the well-known narrative of a famous surrender, a resolute commander held his ground, opposing a leader who would not submit, who would not capitulate, and who defied the destiny of a defeated campaign. This is the Untold account. The final defiance of James Longstreet at Appomattox. The history books record Lee's capitulation and Grant's benevolence, but Longstreet's staunch opposition and steadfast fidelity expose an alternate reality, one of bravery, principle, and an indomitable will. Journey with us as we reveal the concealed events, the quiet struggles, and the pivotal dialogue that altered the course of history. This is not merely a chronicle of the past. It is an awakening. Do not look away for an instant. The common recollection of Robert E. Lee yielding at Appomattox centers on Ulysses S. Grant's gracious triumph. But history often overlooks James Longstreet, Lee's most dependable lieutenant, who himself declined to concede Longstreet did not merely hesitate. He actively contested the very notion. This is the rarely shared narrative of a leader guarding his army's provisions as morale faded, rebuffing subordinates who urged capitulation and defiantly answering Custer's hubris with the retort he would never yield to Sheridan. Lee's renowned pronouncement about preferring 1,000 deaths was ignited by Longstreet's ironclad determination. Even while the Army of Northern Virginia crumbled, Longstreet organized a final defensive position, a stand that ultimately remained unrealized. And when Grant reminisced about their card games from a bygone era, Longstreet held his tongue, conscious of the profound truth underlying the moment. This signaled not only the fall of the Confederacy, but the dissolution of a sacred fellowship. Why did Lee refer to him as his old war horse in their parting? Why did troops acclaim a surrender they had sworn to reject? And for what reason has history dimmed Longstreet's role in the South's last moments? The solutions reside within a tranquil apple orchard, a captured supply convoy, and a general who selected fealty over fame. During the Army of Northern Virginia's retreat from Richmond, Lee and Longstreet often traveled side by side. Lee frequently requested Longstreet's advice on their march. Once they paused to dine with a family by the road who spoke assuredly of imminent victory. Longstreet said nothing, yet Lee answered with grace. "Whatever may come," he stated, "understand that no soldiers have ever fought more valiantly than those who stood with me." By April 4th, the Army arrived at Amelia Courthouse, anticipating provisions, but the depot was empty. Foraging parties were sent to secure food from the surrounding countryside. This critical postponement permitted Union armies under Grant to converge from adjacent roads. Longstreet deployed divisions led by Charles Field and Cadmus Wilcox to protect the supply trains during the foraging operation. This lost time proved catastrophic, however, as Federal troops severed Lee's path to Jetersville, compelling Longstreet's men to divert north towards Farmville. At Rice's Station, Longstreet arrayed his veteran troops defensively while anticipating the arrival of Richard Ewell's reinforcements. April 6th elapsed with no communication from Ewell, and Lee's apprehension mounted. Then word came. Ewell's column had been intercepted and routed at Sailor's Creek. Lee rode out with William Mahone's division to witness the aftermath. Gazing from a high ridge, he observed Confederate soldiers scattering in disarray, and he despairingly inquired of Mahone, "My God, has the army dissolved?" The engagement concluded with Generals Ewell, Kershaw, and Lee's own son Custis taken prisoner. That night, Longstreet pulled his forces back from Rice's Station, crossing the Appomattox River once more in the direction of Farmville. Shortly thereafter, Brigadier General William Pendleton and other officers approached Longstreet, pressing him to advise Lee to surrender. Longstreet rejected the idea outright. He pledged he would never contradict Lee and still held the conviction that their diminished force could prevail if given an opportunity. Until that belief shattered, surrender was not a consideration. Later that evening, as Longstreet and Lee rested near their troops, a messenger delivered a letter from Grant demanding their capitulation. The message read that the outcomes of the last week should persuade Lee of the hopelessness of continued resistance. After perusing it, Lee passed the note to Longstreet. Having been acquainted with Grant before the war, Longstreet glanced over the text, then handed it back with a resolute answer. Not yet. Lee composed his own response that night, disputing Grant's assertion but inquiring about the proposed terms, should they become essential. He sealed the dispatch without revealing its contents and sent it off with a courier. Longstreet later remembered a somber incident during the retreat that highlighted Lee's profound fatigue. One particularly dark evening, we halted by a deserted campfire. The general leaned against a tree and fell into a slumber so profound I worried he had passed away. The strain permitted him no repose, yet his body was utterly spent. The Army moved toward Lynchburg but stopped east of Appomattox Courthouse on April 8th. Lee hoped to find supplies at Appomattox Station, only to learn that Federal cavalry under Custer had captured them. Union infantry closed the ring, and Grant sent another missive urging surrender. Lee consented to meet Grant at 10 a.m. on April 9th. Yet he still harbored a hope of piercing the Union lines. Believing only cavalry barred the path forward, he ordered John B. Gordon's corps to assault at daybreak. Gordon's men initially drove back the Union horsemen, but soon encountered solid infantry support that cemented their failure. Upon hearing this, Lee stated bitterly, "Then there is nothing left for me to do but to go and see General Grant, and I would rather die 1,000 deaths." Reports differ regarding Custer boldly riding into Confederate lines under a flag of truce to confront Longstreet. It is alleged that Custer demanded, in Sheridan's name, the unconditional surrender of this army. Longstreet remained silent until Custer repeated himself, then he retorted sharply, "I am not the commander. If I were, I would never surrender to Sheridan." After seeing Custer out under truce conditions, Longstreet issued his final command. He instructed Porter Alexander to form a last defensive line with the divisions of Mahone and Wilcox, the final order of the Army before its dissolution. That morning, Longstreet met with both Confederate and Union officers at Appomattox Courthouse. Later, he returned and located Lee in a small apple orchard. They exchanged a few words. Lee expressed fear that Grant would insist on severe terms, but Longstreet reassured him that Grant would be magnanimous. As Lee turned to depart, Longstreet added, "General, if he does not offer honorable terms, come back and let us fight it out." This was their last exchange as commanding general and his principal officer. That day, Lee surrendered the Army of Northern Virginia to Grant at the home of Wilmer McLean. Under the terms, Confederate soldiers relinquished their arms and were given paroles to return home. After signing the documents, Lee rode back to his men. Though many cheered, a significant number of soldiers, upon hearing the news, vowed to fight on Longstreet. Gordon and Pendleton later entered the courthouse as commissioners designated by Lee. When Grant arrived at the McLean house, he spotted Longstreet standing nearby, and after dismounting, Grant grasped Longstreet's hands and hugged him. The Union general lightheartedly remarked, "Pete, let us have another game of brag to recall the old days which were so pleasant." Their interaction was brief, and Longstreet soon assisted with the parole process. On the night of April 11th, Lee and Longstreet shared their final bivouac together. The next morning, as Lee prepared to ride to Richmond, he met Longstreet one last time. Their embrace was heartfelt before Lee instructed Captain Tom Gorey, "Captain, I am now placing my old war horse under your care. Look after him well." With that, Lee rode off, never to lay eyes on Longstreet again. Later that day, Longstreet set out for Texas, contemplating a civilian existence unknown to him for 27 years. Yet as Longstreet departed Appomattox, he carried more than just his parole documents. He bore unresolved questions. Why did Lee's final act of entrusting his war horse to a junior officer feel like a eulogy for their entire cause? Why did Grant jest about card games with a man who, only days prior, had refused to surrender? History relegated Longstreet to a footnote, blaming him for Gettysburg while ignoring his defiance at Appomattox. But the official record does not disclose this. Longstreet's final battle line was not intended for combat. It was a signal to Grant and to posterity that the Southern will remain unbowed. It yielded only to starving men and a general who chose compassion over legend. Lee's surrender commenced America's reconciliation, but Longstreet's experience signaled a different commencement, a confrontation with fidelity, historical memory, and the reason why heroes are immortalized as statues instead of fractured men, murmuring "not yet" to destiny. Consider this. When the last campfire grew cold at Appomattox, did Longstreet genuinely think Texas could erase 27 years of warfare? Or was he already strategizing his next conflict, not with rifles, but with the history books? Share your perspectives in the comments, for this is not the conclusion, it is merely a fissure in the edifice. As the final coals of Appomattox cooled, a persistent question remains. Was James Longstreet's resistance the last gasp of a broken cause, or the opening volley in a new war, one waged not on battlefields, but within the annals of history? Did he truly believe a journey to Texas could overwrite nearly 3 decades of conflict? Or was he readying himself for a completely different kind of struggle? The tale continues. It is only starting. What, in your view, is the true meaning of Longstreet's legacy? Share your opinions below, for certain conflicts endure long after the final shot is fired. Don't forget to subscribe to Root Volutionary for more journeys into the heart of history.